Good afternoon, colleagues, distinguished guests. Today is the 9th time that we are going to launch the Library Research Week. I'll be directing the program today for today's Research Week. I've got two colleagues next to me, senior colleagues, Ellen Tice, who is the Senior Director in the Library and Information Services, and also the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the university, Professor Klute. So Prof is the DVC, Research, Innovation and Postgraduate Studies. So I'll hand over to Ellen to do the welcoming. Thereafter, I'll hand over to Prof. Klute to do the opening of the Library Research Week this year. Ellen?
Thank you, Saviwe, and good afternoon. Let me just introduce Saviwe to you as well, who just spoke to you. He's the Director Research Services at the Library and Information Services here at Stellenbosch University. And as he said, I'm Ellen Tice, the Senior Director. One of the central pillars of Stellenbosch University is to produce outstanding research that will impact the lives of ordinary South Africans and the researchers themselves. Naturally, and in line with this vision, the Stellenbosch University's Library and Information Service identified research support as part of its key strategies. As a library, one way of demonstrating our commitment to research is by organizing this Library Research Week this week, which is an annual event that aims to inspire and equip masters, PhDs, and emerging researchers with the skills to conduct research. This year's Library Research Week will be the 9th that we are holding, as you've heard from Saviwe Bangani. It is held under the theme Research on Mask, being agile in a time of change, with sub-themes discovering information, unveiling the secret to an ethically sound research, revealing the research methods, and demystifying research challenges. We seek to highlight the relevance and the high status of research during a time of a crisis like the prevailing COVID-19. This year's Library Research Week serves to assist students and researchers to find innovative ways to continue conducting research amidst the challenges posed by the COVID-19. As part of the Library Research Week, we usually invite renowned scholars to inspire and motivate early career researchers, including postgraduate students, as they embark on their research journey. It was in this spirit that this year we invited Professor Volmink to come and speak about academic mentoring, a subject that is no doubt very close to his heart. We are looking forward to hear from Professor Volmink's lecture a few minutes from now. I just want to share quickly also some of the statistics for this year's Library Research Week. As of 9 o'clock this morning, we had 1,359 registrations compared to 363 in 2019 and 802 in 2020 when we went completely online. And most of these seems to be coming from the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. I'm not sure, is it because that the Dean are speaking this afternoon, of which 124 are those for today's launch. And the ones like literature review and research and search strategy sessions at 157 and 152 registrations respectively. Also worth mentioning is one of Tuesday's sessions on research proposal writing with 133 registrations, while a session on data visualization on Friday has 113 registrations. I'm not mentioning these stats because we are chasing numbers, but to show the relevance of the various sessions that we are offering during Library Research Week. With those few words, I'll hand back to Saviwe, who would then also introduce our DVC research, innovation, and postgraduate students studies. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I don't think the DVC would need any introduction from myself. He is a highly regarded person in the university, and I'm sure most of us know him. So over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Siviwe, and good afternoon, everyone. A special word of welcome also to Professor Volmink, who I know will inspire you right at the outset of this library research workshop. It's good that that you mentioned, Ellen, that this is the 9th of its kind. It is also my 9th year in this position. So it started right when we started working together, and it has gone from success to success, thanks to your effort and your team's effort, and we see the record numbers enrolled for this particular week. So what can you expect during this week? Well, you can expect to learn more about the whole process in terms of how to do research. You start with an idea, you require lots of creativity for that, of course. Then you write a proposal, so you have to find a sponsor, so grant writing becomes important. Then you get the sponsor and you start doing your research. And you need tenacity because not all your experiments will work out the way you thought they would when you started off with the idea. But you continue, and you'll need a lot of tenacity there. You might have noticed that we talk about research and not search, which means you don't do this only once. You continue to do this more than once. And then you have to, of course, start writing up your work. You have to do a proper literature review. That helps already with the proposal that you will write. You've got to find the grants, so grant writing becomes important. And then, of course, you need the skills to do the research. And there are many, of which I believe the Library and Information Service basically forms the core of what you will be doing. You have to get ethical clearance and many other things that you will learn about during the course of this week. And eventually, what you do is you have enough research data. You can present this in a particular way. You submit this to a highly acclaimed international scientific journal, and then it gets rejected after all of this effort. Now, that's not necessarily all bad, because you learn from this process, and very often you can reply to the people that gave you the rejection, and there's a particular way in which you can do that. And then very often you turn out to be very successful in publishing your paper, not only one, but often more than one, or you become successful in completing your postgraduate degree, either at the master's or PhD level, or as a postdoctoral fellow, and then you get hooked on it. In my case, I've been hooked on research for most of my academic career, highly rewarding career. Everything is challenging, everything is new, breaking new ground, learning new people, establishing networks not only in South Africa and with colleagues at this university, but also establishing networks all over the world. So a very exciting journey. I know for those of you who are young and who are writing your first proposal, it's a daunting task. Don't give up. When the first proposal is not successful, you get better at it with time, but continue, be out there, do what you are passionate about, and it will be a highly rewarding career. So welcome to all of you here. Again, thanks to Professor Volmink also for availing his time today to share with us his ideas, and you can look forward to a very inspiring talk. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And good luck for the rest of this week, Ellen, and your colleagues, and all the speakers. Thank you very much. And let's go for it. Let's go for it with agility, as Ellen says, as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof, for that inspirational message. And thank you so much, Ellen, for welcoming everybody to this lunch. Colleagues, now I have an honor of welcoming Prof. Jimmy Volmink, the Dean of the Stellenbosch University's Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. who is our guest speaker today. He's a renowned researcher in his own right and is also NRF rated. So thank you so much. And Prof, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope you can hear me well. And also thank you to Professor Kluter, Ms. Thijs, and others for having given me this honor of doing the opening lecture of the Library Research Week 2021. I think what I'm going to do is right now is to share my screen. So let me do that first. So I hope everyone can see that. Just want to open it a bit more. That's it there. Oops, yeah. All right, so there we are. I think before I commence my presentation, I would like to take a moment perhaps to express my personal appreciation for the work of the Stellenbosch University Library. Its vision as I'm hearing many voices at the moment, so perhaps I'll just stop for a second. Oh. Okay, thank you. So the vision of our library is to be a world-class library, empowering us to discover, share, learn, and excel. And I have to say, in my view, this vision has been realized successfully on almost every level. We are therefore very proud of our library. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Ellen Thijs and her excellent team for the outstanding work they're doing. So when I was asked to speak, I was informed that the theme of this year's Library Research Week was Research Unmasked, being agile in a time of change. I also knew that there were a number of other speakers. There would be a number of other speakers during the course of the week on a range of topics directly related to research. And so I wondered what I could usefully add to what will be presented. And then I looked around a little bit and I found this article linking mentoring to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as somebody has already said, mentoring is something which is close to my heart, and I jumped in excitement when I saw this, and I thought, well, maybe that is how I can perhaps add a bit of value today to focus on this very important topic. I think during this time of change and disruption that we are experiencing, we probably need to have mentoring more than ever. We need to have that more than ever. And so I hope what I have to share with you on this topic would be helpful to you. So let's jump in and say, okay, what's the origins of this concept and this word? And I think that some of you would probably know that it goes back to 18th century BC, where Homer tells a story in which Odysseus, the warrior king, leaves home to fight in the Trojan War and is going to be away for a number of years. And as he leaves, he leaves his infant son, Telemachus, in the care of a trusted friend called Mentor. And Mentor's role was to educate, to protect, and to guide. So if that is what mentoring and a mentor is, do we call somebody who receives mentoring a Telemachus? Well, thankfully not. We've got other words for it. So most simplistically or simply, I think the word mentee can be used as a general descriptor of somebody who receives guidance from a mentor. But if you want to be a little bit more fancy, you can use the word protege, which comes from the Latin protegere, meaning to protect. So what you might ask is, I mean, what is mentoring really? Is it, what forms does mentoring take? And since, that story was written in the 8th century BC, mentoring has developed in a number of ways. It's taken different forms. It's been applied in different settings. So let's just go through a few of these. So in the classic model, you have two individuals, an older one, more experienced, providing guidance to a younger, less knowledgeable person. But that's not the only form of mentoring. You also have reverse mentoring, where a younger person could potentially bring an older colleague up to speed around certain issues. You could also have peers mentoring each other, or you could have a network of mentors with a single mentor, providing different kinds of input into the life and career of a single mentor. And then there's group mentoring with more than one mentee or mentor participating at a given time. So why I'm mentioning this is that I want you to realize that mentoring or mentorship, if you like, is not just for the older, more experienced person, that all of us can be mentors in some way and should seriously consider that prospect. Mentoring forms can be informal, which is sort of developed naturally, or it could be formal, where it's organized by an institution or company or whatever. And then, of course, the way that the mentoring input is delivered can be face-to-face, and increasingly, of course, especially today, more and more mentoring discussions are taking place virtually. Now, you might ask also, why is mentoring such a big deal? Why is everybody talking about mentoring these days? And I want to take you to the cover of the Harvard Business Review in 1978, where the words screamed out, "Everyone who makes it has a mentor." Think about that. That conclusion came out of a lot of work that was done in the corporate world, mostly Fortune 500 companies who from about the 1970s introduced mentoring for their staff and assessed, evaluated, and found that mentoring was extremely important in terms of staff making progress, staff being happy in their environment, and so forth. And what's interesting is that academia at that stage wasn't really paying much attention to mentoring. In fact, it took another perhaps 2 decades before we really saw traction with universities and other types of academic institutions, where the concept of mentoring became interesting as a formal concept for research and for practice. And then we saw mentoring really taking off within universities. So academia was a latecomer in terms of mentoring. We also see that according to the literature, mentoring is largely employed in 3 areas, 3 domains, if you like. The first is, if you like, with youth work. So mostly focused on at-risk youth, where the focus would be developing positive youth development and also reducing risky behavior. So you have programs like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, where they've done this sort of work for years and years. Then in the workplace, as I've already mentioned, in the corporate world, it was certainly very commonplace since the 1970s, and that was focused on career development specifically. And then in the academic setting, the aim was largely to promote academic adjustment, retention of students and staff, success in studies. And I must say that career development is also part of that. And so the distinction between the academic and workplace is somewhat artificial, because I think in the academic setting, you have both of those happening, all of those things happening at the same time. So then let me come to the question of what exactly is mentoring? And here it's quite interesting to see that there is no common agreement on the definition of mentoring. Crisp and Cruz, writing in Research in Higher Education, said by 2007, there were already over 50 definitions of mentoring in the research literature. And Dawson, in Educational Researcher, and I quote, says more than 3 decades of mentoring research has yet to converge on a unifying definition of mentoring. So the question is, if there's no agreed upon definition of mentoring, does this negate its existence? Well, thankfully not. In much the same way as I have yet to come up, I've yet to hear a generally accepted definition of what love is, but none of us would deny its existence. So, we struggle with the definition, but we know it's something real. So what is it really? So here I'm going to beg your indulgence a little bit, because I'd like to share a little bit of my personal story. And I would like to specifically talk very briefly about 2 people, both of whom have had a huge impact on my career. And the first of these is Professor Villanuevas. Now, the story goes something like this in terms of our relationship. One day in my second year at medical school, I was leaving the anatomy building and crossing the car park when I heard a man's voice, which said, "Good afternoon, and how are you today?" Distracted by my own thoughts, I didn't at first realize that the person was speaking to me. When I finally looked up, there right in front of me was one of the most eminent professors at UCT. And as I was later to discover, one of the most distinguished South African scientists. So Professor Villanuevas was at that stage the head of medical biochemistry. He didn't have a clue who I was, other than the fact that I was a medical student. And possibly the giveaway was that I smelled like cadaver. So recovering from that initial shock, I blurted out, "I'm fine, thank you, Professor," and then muttered something like, "Well, not really." The good professor looked at me quizzically and asked, "What's bothering you?" And before I knew it, I was rattling off a story of how I had lost my sister in a motor vehicle accident a year before, that a drunk driver had been responsible for the collision, and that the court hearing was currently in progress, and I was concerned about that. I also mentioned that the legal defense team for the driver was contesting the prosecutor's claim that his blood alcohol level had been over the legal limit, and this was because the police had not taken the blood sample within the legally stipulated period after the accident. Professor Givers listened patiently and showed me great empathy that day. I was stunned. After all, this was South Africa in the mid-1970s, when such caring encounters across the racial divide was quite rare. Prof. Givers listened patiently, and then we eventually migrated from the car park to the library, where he spent more than an hour showing me how to look up critical information on the physiology of alcohol absorption, which he felt could help inform the court case. And I had to tell that story about the library because of the event today and this week. Now, I don't recall having had any formal meetings with Professor Givers before or after that day while I was an undergraduate student. But after that first encounter, whenever we bumped into each other on campus, he would inquire about my welfare, how my family was doing, and how I was progressing with my studies. These brief contacts would always leave me encouraged and motivated. Prof. Givers and I have stayed in touch infrequently over the years. I've sought his advice on a number of issues and his guidance, and he also served as the promoter of my career development in various ways, such as putting my name forward for membership of committees, informing me of scholarships and job opportunities, or nominating me for awards. And that brings me to the second person I will just mention briefly, and that is Sir Ian Chalmers. The setting for this story is during my postgraduate studies in Oxford. What you see on the left is me with my 2-year-old son, Michael, on an old pink bicycle I had inherited from another student. One day, I was cycling down one of the roads in Oxford, and I met a friendly gentleman who introduced himself as Ian Chalmers. He asked if I was new in Oxford, and I explained that I was a Nuffield Fellow who had just started my DPhil. I asked him what he did, to which he replied, "I'd love to tell you, but you'll have to join me for a cup of tea to hear more." So British. The next week, I was meeting with him in his office. And within the first 15 minutes of conversation, I was completely blown away by his ideas. Ian Chalmers, now Sir Ian, was then in the process of establishing an international movement known as the Cochrane Collaboration. Its goal was to develop and promote systematic methods to improve the way clinical decisions are made, methods that would become the backbone of what we call evidence-based medicine. For the next 3 years in Oxford, I spent a great deal of time in Ian's office and in his family home. He introduced me to a vast network of exceptional people in the field of evidence-based medicine. He also created training opportunities for me to acquire relevant skills. And then one day he said, "Well, Jimmy, we have 6 Cochrane centers around the world now, but they're all in high-income countries. I think you should set up a center in South Africa." Well, I almost fell off my chair because I was just halfway through a DPhil. I was completely green as far as the methods were concerned, and yet he thought that I was capable of starting a center in South Africa. Fast forward now to January 1997, a few years later, the South African Cochrane Center was officially opened at the South African Medical Research Council, with me as the founding director. And on the right of this picture now, you can see us celebrating the 20th anniversary of the center at the Medical Research Council. So there is something important I want to say about these experiences. I want to say that the attention I received from these two great people was not because I was unique in any way. The same stories, very similar stories, have been shared by scores of other individuals who have had the good fortune of crossing paths with Prof. Givers and Sir Ian. Their commitment to mentoring has made a huge difference in the lives and careers of many people like me. And you know, the interesting thing is the word mentor didn't come up in any of our conversations, but yet it was all happening. So to sum up this section of what I tried to convey, I'm going to just simply ask the question, what do mentors actually do? So the first is they provide strategic guidance and advice. It can be advice on in a number of areas, either professional or personal development. It can be about institutional culture and politics. And it can really help you better understand the organization in which you are and minimize stress. So guidance and advice is an important role. The second is to serve as a sounding board or a safe haven, a sounding board for testing your thoughts as you are developing as a researcher or as an academic. It's a safe haven to talk about your impressions, your doubts, or your suspicions. Another role of the mentor is to provide honest feedback on your strengths, but also on areas where you need to develop further. A fourth role is to help stimulate your growth by setting high standards, but realistic standards, by challenging you to get beyond your comfort zone. Those are important roles that mentors play. Mentors also act as promoters and advocates for you. So they use their political and social capital to share or create opportunities and link you to mentors link you to relevant networks and perhaps even other mentors. Number 6 is that they motivate and encourage you. That's so important. It's tough being a researcher, it's tough being an academic, and many times you'll be discouraged. So having a mentor there to lift you up is very important. And then I think the inspiration that they provide as role models for leadership, for ethical behavior, for professional development, and for achievement. Their passion is very important as an inspiration. Now, I thought of putting up this slide because no discussion, I believe, of mentoring can really proceed without my thinking of Professor Bongani Mayosi, because he was a good friend and somebody to whose life I was a witness. And I was given the great honor of being the guest speaker at the first Bongani Mayosi Memorial Lecture at UCT. And at that, on that occasion, I reflected on the important role that he had played as a mentor. I said Professor Mayosi had a truly remarkable ability to lift people up, which made him an outstanding mentor. He possessed a generosity of spirit rarely encountered in the academy. And it is that generosity, that selflessness, that made such a difference to you, to me, and to many around the country, the continent, and the world. He was an outstanding mentor, and we're very sad to have lost him at such an early age. But I also have to say that I have met within Stellenbosch University a number of people who are serving as wonderful, outstanding mentors too. And I don't have the time today to talk about them all. What I've tried to do subtly is in the slides to come, I have introduced some faces of people who I know very well and whom I know are doing such a good job of mentoring and lifting up other people. Let me move on now to focus a little bit on the mentee, because what I'd like to say is that the responsibility for successful mentorship does not only lie with the mentor, but the mentee also. The mentee's commitment is also very important. What are some of the features of a mentee that will, promote their own development and ensure that they benefit from the mentoring process? Firstly, let me comment on the personal attributes. So I think personal attributes such as attentiveness and responsiveness, you have to take on board what the mentor is trying to convey. You need to have a desire for growth. There's no point in subjecting yourself to mentoring if the goal is not personal and career development. You have to be open to feedback. So develop a little bit of a thick skin, because the mentor, if he or she is truly honest with you, as I said, will not only point out your strengths, but also highlight those areas where you need to do some work. So be open to that feedback. And be honest about your struggles and about your desires and goals. So those are some of the personal attributes. What about behaviors and actions? So the first thing I want to say is that as a mentee, please do not act as an empty vessel. And by that I mean, your role is not to sit there passively and simply absorb the advice, or the instruction of the mentor. Be an active participant in the process. Be proactive in identifying problems and issues. Come to the meetings well prepared. But also be respectful of the mentor's time. Mentors often, he or she has other responsibilities. They're often high-profile people, great commitment. So you don't want to take up, more of their time than what you have to. So I think those things make for a successful mentoring relationship. But then, of course, there are also barriers to mentoring that should be mentioned. So you may find yourself in a situation where there's no mentoring culture. Now, I have to say that I've been at Stellenbosch for 15 years, and this is the 16th year, and I have to say that I am extremely impressed by the mentoring culture that has developed in Stellenbosch University and is continuing to be driven by people like Professor Klutter, Dr. Trina Tron, and at the institutional level, but also within our departments. There are a number of heads who are driving the mentoring process. But that it is still possible that you personally may find yourself in a situation where the mentoring culture is weak. So that can be a barrier. Secondly, excessive workload. So academics are very busy, and what is privileged usually in terms of promotion are things like research and maybe teaching, maybe service. Mentoring may not specifically be recognized, and so that could be a barrier. What about conflicts of interest? So there are a number of conflicts of interest that can develop in mentoring. So typically, for example, if you're both a mentor and a supervisor, that can lead to conflicts of interest. It is sometimes difficult for you to, as a mentee, to be truly honest. If somebody's supervising your master's or PhD, you might be more open to offloading, your thoughts on somebody that's not linked to your degree or, your postdoc or whatever it is. And then on the mentor's side, there is potential for abuse. If you work too closely with that person on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's something to think about. Conflicts of interest, power differentials, problems of discrimination and intimidation. All of those things work against a successful mentoring relationship. And then, of course, there's something in the literature called the cloning phenomenon in mentoring, which is that people like to see themselves and identify with mentees or potential mentees who are like them. So they may look like them, or they may, share similar interests and so forth. And so they select people from the same sex, from the same ethnic group, etc. And that can be a barrier to mentoring. So that also needs to be addressed. As I come towards the closing few slides, let me just mention a few potential benefits of mentoring. So I specifically say here potential because, as I said, mentoring as a research concept is relatively new. And so, the research is not as strong as we would like it to be very often. There are few longitudinal studies, there are few empirical, experimental studies, and so we have many observations, and we've learned a few things from personal experience and from studies, and so there are potential benefits of mentoring that we can be relatively sure are outcomes that can be realized. First, I should say that if you talk about outcomes, you have to say outcomes for who. So the first set of outcomes are outcomes for the mentee, him or herself. So clearly, mentoring can help you to feel affirmed in your own ability. It can give you more confidence. It can help you to feel less isolated in an environment and therefore experience less stress. A mentee could also be more successful at being linked with important networks in their field. So that's a direct benefit of mentoring. Job satisfaction could be enhanced as well as career development. And all of those things are possible advantages, benefits of mentoring for the mentee. For the mentor, there are also benefits. There is great joy in mentoring others because it gives you a sense of personal fulfillment, a sense of being able to give back what you've received, a sense of being able to make an input into the leaders of the next generation and the future, and your succession, essentially. That gives you satisfaction. But there's also aspects about mentoring that contributes to your self-development. You learn from the mentee quite a lot of things that gives you deeper insight into who you are. But also, perhaps, if it's a mentee working in a completely different field to yourself, you can learn important things about other branches of research or other areas of work. Potentially, in some mentorship programs, there are financial rewards, and then there are also situations, and I think this is the ideal, where your mentoring activities are recognized as part of promotion activities, and so it helps with your career advancement. So there are outcomes for the mentee, for the mentors, and then thirdly, for the organization. So I believe that in an organization that has a strong mentoring culture, the organization improves over time. The workplace becomes better because there are a number of people who are learning how to communicate better, what the barriers are to communication, what the issues are in the organizational culture that has to be strengthened. The organization can also benefit in terms of the mentee, because he or she now feels more empowered and feels more supported, is more committed to the organization, and their work performance improves. Students find that they can be more successful, and so the organization benefits from a better success rate, throughput rate, career development, people advancing their careers, and the organization is also able to retain, better able to retain talent because of good mentoring. So all of those things are potential benefits of mentoring and good reasons for organizations encouraging mentoring. So a last word around choosing a mentor. Mentorship, as I've already indicated, is about relationships. And like all other relationships, you know, they can vary in the closeness of the relationship. So not all mentoring relationships are very close. You may see somebody very infrequently and have more casual contact, but the impact of that interaction may be great. The relationship can be formal. In other words, it's organized by Stellenbosch University or another institution, or it can simply develop organically through contacts like I've spoken about with the two people I've mentioned. And importantly, like any other relationship, it can be initiated from either side, from the mentor side or from the mentee side. But I think what is important, even in formal mentoring situations, choice is important, both for the mentor and for the mentee. And just a few words then about, so if you're somebody looking for mentorship, what are some of the important considerations that you would have to put your mind to in choosing a mentor? I believe there are three really important questions that you can ask. When you're considering choosing a mentor, ask yourself, is the person someone I admire and wish to emulate? Because that's really important, because that's the source of your inspiration. The second question would be, is the person known to be supportive, encouraging, and respectful towards others? Okay, so you don't want to end up with somebody who's going to bully you or be aggressive towards you. You want somebody who's going to be honest, but encouraging and supportive. So that's the second question. And then the third question is the person willing to invest time and energy in me and my development? It's not everybody's cup of tea, not everybody is willing to do this. And so that needs to be established before you engage or embark on a mentoring relationship with someone. So those three questions I hope will be helpful to you as you think about a mentor, choosing a mentor. I'm going to close not with a summary of what I've already said, because I hope it was clear enough, but I want to close with a quote that has always stayed with me. The moment I read this in a paper on mentoring, it so resonated with my own experience, and I hope that you will find it meaningful too. This is in the paper written by Catherine Schruber, and she says the following. She says, mentors are people who can see more in you than you can see in yourself. Effective mentors are so unshakably convinced that we have greatness in us, and their vision of what is possible is so clear and powerful that they wind up convincing us too. Hold on to that thought. That's critically important. My last words to you would be, given what you've heard, if you don't yet have a mentor, please could you find one soon? Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prof, for that inspirational and motivational lecture and more. I thought that it was timely that we actually invited you to present this lecture, and also on this topic.
I just want to say, I'm supposed
given
to hear
the
something
time
I'm
that
not
we are
able to
in.
at the moment.
So I'm not sure if you heard the first part of my, okay. I was saying thank you so much, Prof, for this inspirational and motivational lecture, and more. Basically, you gave us more, because this lecture, we meant it to be motivational as well as inspirational to emerging researchers. I thought you did a very good job. Especially during this time, of COVID-19, where researchers are operating in environments where they may feel, socially distanced, isolated, and lonely. So I hear your message. You are saying that with mentors, they will actually have somebody that they can talk to, somebody that they can rely on, even during this time. And you closed off your presentation or your lecture by encouraging researchers to seek mentors. I think that is also, a timely advice to ensure that in terms of our research output, because, in South Africa generally, it is said that the research output is very low, compared to other countries. Of course, in terms of when you look at the individuals that actually produce research, it is said that it's an aging cohort of researchers. So, for the emerging researchers, I think that was a very important message to say, go out there, get yourself a mentor, so that, they can also start to contribute to the research output of the country as required also by the National Development Plan. Prof, I'm not sure if there are any questions yet. I don't see anything from my WhatsApp. Perhaps there is something from the email, but I'm not sure if Ellen wants to just make a few remarks as well. Okay, no remarks. Let's just wait and see if there are any questions from the emails.
So, who's getting the email?
Let's get now. Okay, seems like we are. Colleagues, if you have any questions, please send them to 083 via WhatsApp 083 792 1207. I repeat 083 792 1207. Oh, okay. So while we are still waiting for questions from others, I was interested, Prof, to what you referred to as the cloning phenomenon. So how do we ensure that, as a mentor, how do you ensure as a mentor that you do not really produce mini-me's as you did mention, under the cloning phenomenon, but I couldn't really get it as to how you ensure that you don't end up, producing your mini-me's when you are a mentor.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, so I did mention the cloning phenomenon. I think this is a phenomenon that is often seen in informal mentoring relationships where, you leave it to chance for people to kind of, link up to younger people who need mentoring and so forth. And so, that sometimes works well, but other times, you end up kind of choosing people that are like yourself. And so that limits access to mentoring perhaps from others. So the ways that can be addressed is through organized mentoring, either organized one-on-one mentoring, where you invite people to indicate that they want to be mentored or will be offering mentoring. At the University of Edinburgh, I believe it's at Edinburgh, they have something which is akin to even Tinder for mentoring. And so you are linked potentially to a number of different people who share some common interests, and you can identify people who want to offer mentoring to certain types of people, or to people, or to in specific areas of mentoring. So you can kind of link up through a software program that allows you to do that. But I think the other way is to have group mentoring, where you have one mentor to many mentees, but this is organized, and so it ensures that more people get access. So there are ways of getting around that cloning phenomenon, but I don't think you can stop it.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. I don't see any questions from the audience. Perhaps I would move on to the next item on my agenda, which is, of course, a vote of thanks. Once again, Prof, I would like to... there is a question that has just come in. I'm sorry about this. It's from somebody who remains anonymous, and he's asking, are there any laid out process for getting a mentor in Stellenbosch? If you get a mentor who is not your supervisor, can there be a conflict between the supervisor and that mentor?
Yeah, so in terms of what is happening at Stellenbosch as a whole, probably people like Professor Kluter or Dr. Theron might be in a better position to address that. But yeah, so I just maybe make a brief comment, and that is to say that I think what is very often confused is mentoring and supervision and coaching. Those are not the same things. A mentor can be probably more effective if they're not linked to supervision in any way, but they're somebody that you can speak to about a range of issues. And that's been my experience both at the undergraduate and postgraduate level. The mentors that meant the most to me were not people that supervised me in any way. So I'll say that part, and maybe Prof Kluter would like to comment on what happens at Stellenbosch University.
Yes, if I could just add to that, Professor Kluter unfortunately had to leave us a little bit earlier, but we will definitely put this question forward to him or Dr. Theron in terms of what the process is and the policy around this. And we will post it basically, or send it to all the participants for the record.
Okay, Prof, I still have another question that I was trying to avoid, but it keeps on ringing. Because we actually asked you to choose a topic of your, your own interest, something that you would like to talk about. And we know that you are going on retirement. So I was just wondering, if there was a reason for that, for you to choose this topic. Is it because that you are looking at, it's something that you are looking at doing post-retirement?
Have you been speaking to my wife or somebody? You seem to have information about this. Yeah, look, I think mentoring is very close to my heart. And first as a professor and then as a dean, I've continued to play that mentoring role. Obviously, my time was limited during that time. I think with retirement, I certainly would have more time and certainly would be very interested in providing mentorship to people. I think, if I said recently at another talk at the MRC, I said, if I look back on my career, the one thing in my career that has given me the most joy is to be a mentor, is mentoring others. So that will continue to be something that I think I'd like to do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I'm sure the emerging researchers are actually listening. It's a challenge to them. Thank you once again, Prof. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Prof. Volmink for his inspirational presentation, which in my view is also, a fitting tribute and farewell from Prof, who has served the university and the country in his role as an academic leader, or shall I say as a mentor with distinction. Prof, thank you so much for agreeing to come and speak in our library event. We appreciate and value your contribution, and we wish you very well in your retirement when you are finally allowed to retire. But please know that the university and the country at large will continue to draw inspiration from the wisdom of leaders like yourself. I hope your presentation today was based on the role you foresee for yourself in the future. I would like to thank Prof. Klute for gracing this event and for the continuous support that he gives to the library. We really appreciate the fact that through Prof. Klute, we feel supported at the highest level of the university management and structures. I'm also grateful to Ellen for her leadership and also for the active support that she gave to the 2021 Library Research Week Organizing Committee as we organize this event and the library activities that would follow. I acknowledge the Library Research Week Committee members for their dedication and contribution to the success of this event and the organization of the Library Research Week as a whole. I also acknowledge Kirchner, Van de Venter, and Danny at the back there for providing the technical support for today's event. Last but certainly not least, I thank everybody who attended today's Library Research Week launch. We appreciate your support, and we are very conscious of the fact that without you, this launch would not have been successful. We hope you'll continue to support us by attending sessions from tomorrow onwards. Please feel free to continue providing us with feedback on how we can improve our service to you. With those few closing remarks, I wish to wish you a very good evening. Thank you so much. And thank you so much once again, Prof. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.